you can become an amazing artist who is well revered in your particular community, and have other people who are artists come and talk to you and discuss art. And as you're discussing those things, you can actually share these ideas of liberty with them. And that is my segue to my friend, Victor Pross, who is an artist who is sharing the message of liberty. Please welcome Victor Pross.
Everybody, thank you for coming out. I want to start off by simply saying, boys have penises, girls have vaginas. There's only two sexes, and Epstein didn't kill himself. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay. I've always been envious of Tim Moe's famous line of protecting your gay married couples protecting their pot plants, with guns. So I just try to top you on that, So I figure penises and vaginas might do it. So actually, I saw that on a meme on Facebook. It's like this little boy is in a classroom and he says like, there's only two sexes, male and female, and the teacher's looking on aghast. It's just like the kids are there. That kid's getting the Ritalin. So it's just. But everything that Tim has been talking about in terms of culture, I absolutely agree with him. It is a matter of starting at the roots of society. You can tell, like in today's culture, that you can see it everywhere. It's just like a boiling Ganges cultural surface. It's just coming up further and further. Just like I can remember back in the day when I was a young man taking university at York. I studied under Professor John Redpath, who was an objectivist professor. And I think, and then I came across the works of one of our present speakers, is Walter Block. So all of this got me thinking about, like, even back then, I realized there's something seriously wrong with the culture. I wasn't buying the narrative necessarily. And it's funny how we all come to thinking about ideas and how we come to our current position, such as it is. If you're libertarian or if you're more socialist or left-leaning or anarchist or whatnot, is that you might be influenced by the works of Karl Marx or Kropotkin or on the other side, Murray Rothbard or Ayn Rand and whatnot. But there's other interperceptible moments that just had me lifting the scales from my eyes, where I became like more awoke, just to borrow that term. And I remember one time I was raised in the country, and I was kind of a country bumpkin, and I decided when I found myself all of a sudden on my own at the age of 18, at some point I decided to travel to New York, because I'd always read about it, always heard about the culture and the entertainment scene there. And I remember when I was like 20 years old, I remember something that really stood out to me. And it was something as simple as a protest that was going on. And there was like these religious conservatives, and they had signs, like maybe it was the AIDS was a part of a problem or social problem or whatever. But there's these religious conservatives with various signs. And one of them said, "God hates fags." And this was a shock to me. A 20-year-old guy, wet behind the ears, country bumpkin. And this was like really a surprise. And I thought, wow, that's amazing, to know what God likes. That's going to be very convenient, That's right. So, and like even years later, with all different types of social situations that I've been involved, it gets the wheels turning. You hear other things like about Michael Savage of Savage Nation, a podcast. I don't know if you know who that guy is, right? He actually believes, and he says it in quite a serious way. He says, like, yeah, God intervened to get Trump elected. Like he actually believes it. Like there's divine intervention to get a certain politician into power. He's quite sincere with it too, and it just absolutely astounds me, right? It's just like, you talk about a case for impeachment, getting the Lord to intervene on your side, right? Rigging that the system is rigged with the supernatural. So there you go. In other cases too, you have. I remember talking to this like one very young person. I'm always curious about young people. What do you plan on doing? Are you going to school? Are you going to university? What are you doing? So it's like one tattoo-addled girl is We started falling into a conversation, and she's going on about male privilege and toxic masculinity and white supremacy and toxic men and white men, the worst of the worst, right? And she seems like she's completely oblivious to the fact that she's talking to a white guy, for God's sakes, right? So it just goes to show you how internalized these ideas are, that they become kind of like obscure to the outer world that's around them. And that's how entrenched a certain ideology can become. I mean, you even take the case of like that old yarn about the Soviet women who were waiting in a bread line at sub-freezing weather, and they're line up around the block or whatever, and they're waiting for their bread. Their loaf of bread, it's even Wonder Bread. It's not quality bread. It's not an Italian loaf. And one old Soviet woman is trying to comfort the other, and she's saying, just think, in America, the government doesn't even distribute the bread. So, we got it pretty good here in Soviet Russia, right? So that's the whole thing of how ideas can become very much entrenched. And that's the nutshell that has to be broken. Okay, that's the nutshell has to be broken. So that you can see this in culture everywhere. You see with manifestations of Antifa. You see it in the language of just everyday people that you speak with. So it is a cultural issue. So, and the radical left, they know where to fight the battle. Tim was trying to bring it back to home to where the left has taken their course. The left has infected every area, for Christ's sakes. They've gone after language, for Christ's sakes, and therefore concepts, and therefore ideas. And they've gone right into the universities, they've gone right into the media, they've gone right into the arteries of the culture. And what are the libertarians doing? They're voting! So I think something is
No comment.
Is seriously amiss. Yeah. So this is where the battle has to be fought. Now I came up with this theory. If I'm going to be a libertarian theoretician. By the way, I'm a painter by stock and trade. I can actually make money doing that, believe it or not. So don't be shocked by that. But I've taken the time. And the art, and pursuing the arts is like a bitch of a career. I mean, come on, this is like the toughest goddamn gig, right? It's even tougher than being a fighter, maybe, because I get fat, disheveled women going, "That doesn't look like me. Fuck you." So it's a tough gig, right? So I'm taking the time out and the energy to do this other thing called activism. I'm kind of like the archaeological caricaturist too, because my positions do come into the more comical political comic strips that I've done. I've done like single panel cartoons, and I started even back then doing gallery shows, so spreading it out all among. There's also a documentary that's being done by me, by a devoted woman by the name of Shelley Morton, who's been following me for 6 years. And she's somebody definitely who leans to the left. So she's been completely triggered every time that she's heard me speak, right? Here's this poor woman. She's divided between being a very devoted, I'm a filmmaker, I'm going to make a film on this guy, but God damn it, right? So I know about the anger and the hostility that you can get from people on this issue. I've been put into one category over another, where let's say that when I started entertaining these ideas of the possibility of a stateless society, of course you get all kinds of objections, and somebody would have shot at me like during Obama's campaign that I was very critical of Obama. And so somebody said that, so you're for Bush, right? Just like, where'd that come from, right? This is at a point where I was sustaining politics altogether. And then later on, when it came to Trump facing off with Hillary, I was raking Hillary all over the coals on a lot of issues, and I got the same thing. So you're for Trump then? And I even had that from this filmmaker, this devoted filmmaker for the last 6 years. She one time when I was just running Hillary Clinton over the rakes, she stood up, a professional filmmaker, and she's on camera. She's got the cameras are going, and she comes forward and she says, "What do you think about Trump?" And this was even like prior to the election, for Christ's sakes. And the funny thing is that, you know, I even had a debate with Walter Block on the whole election with it. Well, it was a discussion. It wasn't a debate, right? You know, so it's just like, this goddamn caricatured punk is going to argue with me. It's like, no, but no, it was a good discussion. And Tim himself also had a debate with Walter. So then that's all good. Now, one of the ideas that I had about the state is that, or society, if I'm going to be the type of caricaturist who takes a critical look at the culture in spoken word and in the arts as well, I really have to know my thing. So I went to university, I studied Ayn Rand, I studied general philosophy. I've come a long way. I'm an old man now, so I've been reading and thinking about these subjects for the last 30 years. So if that gives me any credentials whatsoever to speak with, I'm happy. But I have this one idea, and I want to pass it on to you and see what you think about it. Is that the culture that we live in, that Tim outlined in a very dramatic fashion, comes down to the fact of the orientation in which the individual is raised. Okay, so I have this thing called the 3 pillars of society. And the 3 pillars are characteristic of any society. I think it can be universalized, whether we're talking about the East or the West. And we have 3 pillars. That's the family, that's religion, and that's the state. And we're introduced right from the time of infancy into an authoritarian-based ethic. Okay? And I do use the word ethics here just as in the sense of like a code of conduct, you know, whether it be the collectivist ethics or the ego. I'm not talking about the different theory of ethics. I'm just talking about the broad subject. Our introduction to the subject is through the family, religion, and the state. You take the family, especially, and this is not like any kind of tirade against the family, of course not. It's just modern methods to parenting is something that's being called into question. It's been outlined numerous times by Stefan Molyneux, of course, right? Everybody in the room knows who Stefan is, right? Oh, yes. Okay, right. And that is, it's a completely top-down hierarchy. Do it because I said so. That's why, right? Maybe you have some offshoots here where there's doing some actual parental raising of developing the cognitive faculties of the child, you know, and whatever. But for the most part, it's do it because I said so. I'm the fucking parent here. You know, I'm bigger than you. Okay, that's what it comes down to. Do it because I said so. Do as I say, not as I do, you know. So if you take anything from Ayn Rand, you can take it that the moral is the grasp, that it's the understood. You know, it's more of a secular scientific approach to ethics. You have to have a standard. Why the field of ethics? The standard is life, so you can live, right? Ethics is the understood, not the obeyed. You study it like a science, for Christ's sakes, you know, and you know what the competing theories are. So here you have the individual exposed to that type of orientation to ethics through the family, the first relationship that the child is ushered into in this world. Next, you have religion. Most people have come under the influence of religion. Doesn't necessarily mean you had it shoved onto you by your parents, but you're living in a society where it's everywhere, of course. Whether Eastern or Western, that too has an authoritarian base. God now becomes the replacement of the parents. It's kind of like, do it because I said so, because I'm God, for Christ's sakes. I'm your parent. I'm the supernatural parent. I'm bigger than you. So that's where that comes from. So it all becomes an obedience is the chestnut in the Christian religion, of course. This whole thing of the taking it metaphorically, allegorically, it wasn't like a literal Adam and Eve, you know, you're supposed to take it allegorically. And what I take allegorically from the message is that don't eat from that tree. It's a matter of the virtue of obedience. Don't eat from that tree. Don't eat from that apple tree. Oh, fuck, they ate from that apple tree. God damn it, you disobeyed me. So that's where shit comes around, and all of life is damned. And then to practice ethics is something that's hedonistic, that's something that's fun, that you have to sneak in. Ethics becomes something against the individual, because now it's all externally opposed upon you. Then you get the state. Of course, that too is, hey, do it because I said sorry yourself. You'll find yourself in a yellow jumpsuit, okay? Or orange in this case, maybe in the States, right? So it's all a matter of imposing all of this onto the individual, and they are epistemologically ripe to keep on repeating after and after, every election, humanity looking for some kind of goddamn savior, okay? Somebody has to steer this ship, you know, we need a leader, right? A lot of people will have all different types of criticisms of that politician. Oh, they're all full. They're all a bunch of crooks. They're all crooked. It's all bullshit. This is the selection of candidates we have for the next election. We're in bad shape here. Oh, so you're an anarchist? What? Fuck no. We need a government, right? So we have that abstraction, government, as the repository of all things good, all things orderly, and we completely ignore the concrete particulars of the people, the specific people, the actors involved, and what they're doing, And if we do ask the question, therefore, you know, in the sense of breaking that spell, of breaking through the nutshell of certain ideas, getting out of the election booth, the same type of energy and time that you could take going voting and actually getting yourself all invested into a certain candidate, only to be surprised that that person didn't get in. You're just setting yourself up for hardship. That same time that you could have been doing all of that emotional investment is the same time that you could have been doing a podcast or writing an article, communicating ideas that way. Another thing too is that the other type of objections that you will get, of course, is like people would say, here's where that parental image comes back. They actually see the idea of a stateless society as like, what do you want to leave the kids alone in the house when we're out, you know, without a babysitter? They're 10 years old and leave with the matches? That's how they view society in a state, the idea of a stateless society. Leaving the kids alone while the parents go out and they're 10 years old, right? And, or leaving the show to the clowns to run, right? So they just take that abstract principle called government and they completely dichotomize it, removing it from the concrete particulars, and the government is an institution of force. Just like a parent can be the institution of force to enact a certain form of behavior or compliance or whatever. Spanking, timeout, you have that with religion as well. Maybe not just supernatural threats from beyond, but sometimes it's turned into actual threats of physical violence, of course. So all behind this, you have the implicit threat of force in all of these institutions, right? So so when you get down to the nutshell what the government it is, it's not voluntary interaction. It's a parasite that is actually hanging on the jugular of society, okay? I am talking about, just think about language and the idea of spontaneous societies developing without an overarching dictatorial where one size has to fit all. You take the question of the division of labor. You have specialization, you have the division of labor, you multiply that by in the thousands into the millions, and you have all types of goodies and services and physical goods springing from that because it is decentralized. And if you have the government that monopolizes certain areas, or whether it be the drug war or the medicine or the coal industry, that industry, this industry, everything the government touches turns to shit. Even a conservative can grant that. Now that here, but we say that you have a certain theory of government where it's to be the protector of individual rights. Well, that's the most goddamn important area of conflict resolution, and everything else that's said to be or self-defense and whatnot. To give that to a small handful of people is to diminish the quality of the service of where you would have that on a competing market. The same principle applies there. So it's all a matter of communicating ideas that breaks down this bubble, this mantle, and not just on some kind of like surface political level. Because when you get right down to it, now we have the culture, the left-wing culture. It's penetrated the culture, and now it's going into the laws. Everybody's heard about hate speech laws. What do we have Trudeau now? What is Trudeau's introduced? I can't remember any of this. C-51, time and a half, partridge in a pear tree law, or what's this one he has about like misgendering somebody or hate speech? Yeah, yeah. And you can see where the culture is first and the reflection is the politics. The libertarians are poking at the shadow cast from the statue that casts the shadow from the state. The state is the statue that you have to attack and stop trying to push the shadow. The state just reflects the culture, for God's sakes. Just this whole idea of having centralized top-down hierarchy of force is an idea. It's just an idea that's just been imposed, for Christ's sakes. It's not divinely inspired. It's just a human convention, and it's a stupid, disastrous convention. And I think all of 2,000 years, well, 2,000 years plus, no, 3,000, 5,000 years plus, when I go back to, I don't know, like caveman warriors banging the head over and saying, I'm the leader, I'm the chief here, or whatever, let me organize everything. And then it just became all adorned into some normative narrative. You know, they preempted even the area of law, for Christ's sakes. And you know, just to sign off on this talk, just to give you an idea of where, you know, you could be a libertarian. Yeah, I'm a free market libertarian. The government has no right in the business of this, and this. But because I'm a kind of Ayn Rand objectivist minarchist, just defense, just the courts, just the police, and just the military. Well, they suck in every other area. Why do you want them in those most important areas, for Christ's sakes? Well, what are you calling for? Anarchy, which means like a complete breakdown of society, a collapse? That's the bullshit. That's part of the bullshit narrative, all the bullshit narratives that you're hearing these days. Just to give you, I don't expect you to remember this, but just to whet your appetite, that there are works, and this is one of the things of where I was formerly an objectivist, just like Tim was, if that's correct, right? You could designate yourself that. And I heard up and down, like the lowest of the low, even lower than communists are the libertarians and the anarchists. They're lower than whale shit, right? Because they, at least the communists, as the objective would say, is that, well, they're calling for some kind of government. Well, at least they're calling for some kind of government, you know, but the anarchists, you know, so the lack of a state translates to their mind to nihilism. But they will not tell you about the rich dearth of literature that's out there, where it's showing that libertarians or anarchists are not just like this hippie commune drinking from the bong waters, social metaphysicians, ethical subjectivists, wayward pot smoking. Well, okay, me accepted, of course, right? But you have, anarchists have written extensively on the need for jurisprudence and courts in a non-state system. Such matters were discussed during the late 1800s and early 1900s by libertarian anarchists such as Gustav de Molinari, Benjamin Tucker, and then you have The Market for Liberty by Morris and Linda Tannenhell, and I think even Murray wrote a book on jurisprudence and law, if that's right. I can't remember the name of the works. Yeah, that's right. Have you written on anything on that, like Walter? Yeah.
I've written on everything.
You've written on everything, yeah. 500 articles. Okay, anyway, now just to close up, this tattoo that I have here, you can see that that's an anarchy sign with that says, the anarchy symbol, ART, so Anarchist Artist. A lot of people, when they, if they're interacting with me and they're talking with me and they happen to just by chance get a glimpse of that, sometimes I can find the eye wandering down and it's kind of like a worriedness. It's like, oh, yeah. Yeah, so now they're wondering if they're talking to a devil worshiper or whatnot, right? But really, could get down to that. As far as I'm concerned, what this means to me is peace. Okay, and this whole idea, there's other criticism that I got that you always get to, or at least I do. I don't know what your position is, right? But at least I guess is that, man, fuck, you are so deluded. There is, read my lips, there is never, ever going to be a stateless society, because you're living in an utopia, dude. I'm telling you, you're really living into utopia, right? To that, all I have to say is that I don't subscribe to any kind of historical determinism. Culture and societies are determined by the people that comprise it. And whatever dominant voice that it takes the position, that takes the position of being the official narrative, among a lot of opposing microscopic narratives, but there is a primary narrative that guides any given society. All of this is human volition, for God's sakes. There is nothing manifest destiny in this. Thank you. So, to that, but in the meantime, though, while living in a state, my attitude is this. This whole thing, you're an utopian, why are you wasting your time? It's just bullshit, what are you doing? It's just that, well, I'm living my life. I'm free in my mind. I'm not buying into the bullshit. I thought my way through it. How is that a bad thing? Because I don't get my stateless society tomorrow in my lifetime? But maybe I could be a part of being on the right side of history to set the foundation if it is to come. And there's nothing to say that it can't, or I won't. And I don't buy this genetic argument too, by the way. So I disagree with that. So ingrained in us as a species or whatever. But that's what this means to me, is that I don't believe in the initiation of force. And believe me, I've come from a background where I have seen violence. I had seen domination. I had seen politicians like manipulation with words, silver tongues, parasites. I've seen it up close, and I thought my way through it. And as far as free markets are concerned, a lot of people are confused about that as well, in the sense of like, oh, hey, that's kind of like a left-wing movement. Propopkin, property is theft, blah, 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 blah. That all comes from a mistaken notion, is that the state and the capitalist class is all of one thing. It's really kind of like the same entity. So by speaking against the bourgeois, you're speaking against not only the government of the ruling elite, but they're captains of industry and the right and right. No, free market, stateless society, that's what I see as a possibility. And as the only moral alternative that humanity can take in it is zigzag back and forth advancement throughout the ages. That's why I'm Victor Prost, doing my thing, Pop Goes the Culture. Thank you. By the way, Q&A. Yeah, I'll take a couple of questions if I have any, and then I'll be showing my painting of Trudeau. I think you'll like it.
Oh, I would like to see that painting.
Any questions, anybody?
I have a question.
Yes.
What do you think about Jessica and Eve taking people to human rights court?
Yeah, well, that's an example of a manifestation of the current culture that we're living in. That can even be taken to be heard before a tribunal is indicative of the culture that we're living in too. There's a proliferation of all different types of rights, but this smooth ball rights is a new one on me, yeah. Right? So.
And this person has deplatformed my YouTube channel by making false digital copyright strikes.
Yeah, no recompense or no compensation. Oh, sorry about like that. So yeah, there's no injustice there. And I don't know. Does anybody know about this story? No? Oh, okay. Yeah, there was this trans person. It was just a con person. It was just a guy dressing up and playing the whole trans sensitivity, playing on that, who was nothing more than a manipulator and a parasite, going around to a whole slew of different estheticians and women who perform or working out of their homes to make an extra buck by performing services like waxing for women and whatever. It's going, well, I'm a woman, don't misgender me, that whole bullshit, blah, blah, blah. And so it's like, you're discriminating against me, and then took it to court, like one person after another and things like that. It was a complete clown show. So, yeah, there you go.
And one more thing, too, I gotta say something, too. After the tribunal decided to basically tell Jessica and Eve, or Jonathan and Eve,
yeah, even the media, even in the reports, they're still referring to Jessica was sued to have her balls shaved. Her balls. Listen to the language.
And one more thing.
It's a clown show.
I gotta say one more thing too.
Yeah.
It was on Blair. He was on Blair White's channel and brandished a taser.
Yeah.
Somebody from Halifax. I'm not gonna say who. One of my sources I've been talking about because there's a lot of information I'm not gonna say. Call the cops and there's a court date.
Is this a question?
I'm just letting you know what's going on. So sorry. I'm just letting you know she has a court date on December 5th for a weapons charge.
Okay, it's information conveyed. Okay.
Okay, sorry, Victor.
That's okay. Is anybody have any questions? No? Okay, that's okay then.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Now just think of his recent exploits.
I might get barred from Facebook.
Now we have, it says Mammy. That's an old Al Jolson tune from the 1920s. And he says, Mammy kind, I'd walk a mile for one of your smiles.
Nice ass.
It's nice ass.
Hey, did you know his wife actually left him?
I didn't know that.
Actually, she did. I found that out the hard way.